Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Pediatric Grand Rounds. My name is Sandrine van Scherk. I'm the Vice Chair for Education, and I take the place briefly for Dr. Hirsch, our chair, who is unable to be here because he is at a conflicting national meeting, and sent his regrets. It is a very special honor today to welcome some guests to UCSF Pediatric Grand Rounds that aren't part of our regular schedule, but a little bit out of what we often do and outside of what we often do with these sessions. And very special to have two guests that are going to be introduced by Anda Quo, who is the Director of Child Health Equity and Community Outreach in our department, and has been instrumental in ensuring that topics like this related to social justice and health equity make it onto our programming. So Anda, will you do the honors of introducing our fabulous guest for today?
Of course, thank you. It's a real honor, and it's perfect timing because about a year ago, several of us from UCSF went on a health equity pilgrimage led by Glide and Rabbi Michael Lizak and Isoke Feme, our guest speakers, to the South. And it was really a journey of love, healing, and a foundation for change in our institution. And I'm eternally grateful and so excited that they're here to share their expertise and wisdom. So just a quick background. Rabbi Michael Lizak is the rabbi at Glide in San Francisco, a radically inclusive, just and loving community mobilized to alleviate suffering and break the cycles of poverty and marginalization. He works in Glide's Center for Social Justice, aiming to magnify the impact of Glide's justice machinery and to forge covenantal bonds between Glide and communities throughout the Bay Area. He brings a wealth of experience, 100+ civic, tech, and healthcare leaders on Glide's annual Alabama Justice Pilgrimage. He spearheads groundbreaking work with law enforcement and district attorneys and UCSF from around the country to help them understand the challenges faced by people living in extreme poverty. In his previous position as congregational rabbi in Marin County, he founded programs to love and support families and inmates at Pelican Bay, San Quentin, and Vacaville state prisons. He's on the national board of TRUA, the Rabbinic Call for Human Rights, and he's married to Rabbi Noah Kushner, who some of you may know, and is the proud father of 3 daughters. Isoke Feme, our other guest speaker, holds the title of Maven of Transformative Learning at Glide Center for Social Justice and leads its summer internship program called Emerging Leaders. She's a co-founder and director of the Todos Institute and co-authored No Boundaries, a manual for intercultural alliance building. She also developed Leading with Soul, a curriculum for cultural leadership. And for over 25 years, Isoke has worked with hundreds of groups throughout the United States, including ours, supporting them to appreciate and engage difference. She is a masterful educator. In her work, Isoke draws on indigenous African concepts such as soul force, personalism, and vitalism as ways of engaging and integrating learning. And she's devoted her life to the work of unlearning oppression and illuminating power at the intersection of spirit and culture. Thank you both. I'm so excited. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Anda. So. Uh-oh.
I think that's better now.
Are we good?
Sounds that way, yes. Go ahead.
Okay. So I am going to start us off. My name is Isoke, and I tell people it's okay if you forget how to say it. And true to my title and my heart's desire, I want to start soulfully with you. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask you, wherever you are, and I know some of you may be busy and multitasking, but to the extent that it's possible, just ask you to stop for 60 seconds and bring to mind someone who, a child or a family or some other patient or client or person in your world who keeps you up at night, or who you wish you could tell people what a great triumphal story lives there. You want to just bring your heart present. See if you can think of the name of that person or persons. And what is it about them that's compelling? And just silently bring them into your heart area, which I'm sure you do anyway. Thank you for doing that. I want to invite you this way. I want to say, we together are changing history's trajectory. For a very long time now, we have been on a trajectory of separation, of lessers and mores, and better and worse people in the world. And we've been divided from each other. And that has cost us a great deal. The wisdom that lives at the top and at the bottom doesn't get to be shared. The love, the concern doesn't get to be shared. We're taught we're given so much misinformation about each other that we end up not being able to benefit from the love and the juice that we all bring. So I can see right now, and I have been seeing it for a while, that we are on our way to a whole different reality. And maybe some of you already know that. You can see it, you can feel it. Some maybe not so much. But if you can feel that, if you can sense that it's like it's not all good, it's shaking us up. It's like, whoa, we're on a rough ride here. There's so many challenges we're facing. That is true. But what is also true is that this gap between the bottom and the top is coming together. Various strands are coming together to collaborate, to look for ways to make the system more just for everyone. And I am so proud to be here, to be representing Glide and just humanity too, with you. And I hope that you'll walk away from this experience feeling more empowered, feeling more inspired, and feeling more capable. So welcome and thank you for coming. And with that, I'll turn it to the rabbi.
Sophie, I had that you were going to sing a song and talk a little bit about Glide. Does that feel right now?
Okay, I will. All right.
I don't think they'll be sorry.
Okay. Well, let me sing this song that is a prayer for me. It wasn't written as a prayer, but it feels like a prayer to me. Written by Holly Near and Chris Williamson, right after 9/11, in response to 9/11. I am open and I am willing to be hopeless, what seems so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly. May the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though it burns opens our eyes, and I am open. I am willing to be hopeless, would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. May it be so. May it be so. I want to just speak for a moment about Glide. Glide is this magical place that sits on the corner or stands on the corner of Taylor and Ellis in the Tenderloin of San Francisco. Some of you know the Tenderloin, many of you probably don't. But this is a place where people of great wealth and great poverty are sitting right next to each other. You have all these fancy stores in Union Square and hotels, et cetera. And then you have the Tenderloin, you know, these SROs, single occupancy hotel rooms. You have a lot of homelessness. You have all the, it's a condensation of so much of what ails us. Drug use and sex trade, and children are living right in there with all that stuff that's going on. But there's also a vibrancy, there's also a certain dignity to this community. And it's always, the Tenderloin's always been a hot spot. Well, in 1964, Cecil Williams, Reverend Cecil Williams, is assigned to this church at the corner of Ellis and Taylor, which is, from its inception, has always been both a foundation and a church. So Rabbi and I, we work on the foundation side. But anyway, so along comes this man from Texas, where he, you know, he lived in a community that was rife with anti-Black violence and sentiment. He grew up under that in Texas, and but he always knew he wanted to be a preacher, and he always knew that he wanted to preach to a multi-ethnic congregation. No such thing was heard of then when he was growing up. He's 90 now. Maybe he's 91. Yeah. And, you know, so he had no model for that. That was just something that Spirit told him needed to happen. So he gets to San Francisco. There are 35, well-to-do white ladies who are, that's the church. The church was dying, and that's who was there. And he had to come in and figure out how to reinvigorate this congregation. And what he decided was that, you know, that the church was not the building, but it was the people. And who were the people? The people were these prostitutes and drug dealers and, you know, hustlers and, you know, all, poor people, all kinds of people. And he decided, this is your church, come in. And one of the things he did was he had a jazz band come to draw the people into the building. And I think it was Christmas. He also took out all the hymnals, he took down all the crucifixes, and he just said, we don't want anything here that makes people feel they don't belong. So he didn't give up Christianity for himself, but he decided he wasn't going to let Christianity be a boundary or a block to unity, to beloved community. So the values of Glide are unconditional love, radical acceptance, truth-telling, for the people, celebration. These values, he didn't come in and say these are the values, he just lived them and acted on them. And the people then started saying, we're radically inclusive, but he didn't say that. They said it based on what the culture he created there. And that's what we are trying to extend throughout San Francisco, throughout the region, and throughout the country. The Glide feeling of like, no matter how tore down you are, how messed up you are, you belong here. You get to be here with us, and we embrace you. Yeah, we still might have to work through some of our stuff, but our goal is to embrace everyone And it was from that ground, that fertile ground of radical inclusivity and radical acceptance, that the um, the Alabama pilgrimage kind of took root. And I think I'll just turn it from there to you, Rabbi, because this is where you come into the story.
Thank you, Isoke. Always a treat to learn with and from you. To hear you sing is one of the great gifts in my life, and I think for everyone online with us here. Anda, thank you so much for your beautiful welcome. To everyone who's online and listening, I first want to just honor, we feel honored and blessed to be here, but also want to offer a blessing to you all who are for doing immensely challenging and I can imagine painful work pre-COVID and all the layers of complication that have come since then. And just on behalf of this beautiful and challenged city of ours, I want to just offer up our gratitude for the holy healing work you do on a daily basis. As Anda said, I was a congregational rabbi in Marin County for 14 years. About 7 years ago, I brought a person named Brian Stevenson to come speak to our congregation. If you don't know Brian, before you go to bed tonight, you should watch his TED Talk. And, within a month, you should read his book, Just Mercy. I think he's one of the most righteous people alive in America today. He founded something called the Equal Justice Initiative that helps get wrongly convicted people off of death row in Alabama. And when he came to visit Marin County about 7 years ago, he said that they were in the process to build a museum and a memorial. And an image he gave us in Marin County was, he said that teams of his staff and volunteers are going out to known lynching sites around America and taking glass jars to those sites where human beings were brutalized and murdered and strung up from trees, most of them African American. And they're collecting the dirt from the ground and putting that dirt in the ground, and they're going to put all of the known lynching sites, dirt from that soil, onto shelves at this memorial, which I'll tell you more about in a minute. And that image haunted me. It still haunts me. It made me think of this line from Genesis 4:10, right after Cain kills Abel. The Hebrew is me asita, like, what have you done? And then, hark, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. And I looked at my wife and I said, we have to go to the opening of this museum. And a few years later, I started working at Glide. And soon after I came to Glide, I met with the development director, Kim Bender, at the time. And we said, we got to go and we should take people from Glide. We're going to take 10 people. We're like, yeah, that's going to be a big deal. And by hook and crook, we ended up taking 85 people to the opening of the museum and the memorial. For those of you who don't know, the museum is called the Legacy Museum. It connects the dots from slavery to mass incarceration. It tells the brutal story of how hundreds of thousands of Africans were brought from their towns and villages and communities and families ripped apart to America to be indentured servants. And it talks about the slave trade. And that museum, just hold this image for a minute, is housed in a former slave warehouse. It's housed in a building that used to house people who were about to be sold off into slavery. And it is a haunting building and a haunting museum. And the museum itself is situated about 3 or 4 blocks from the Alabama River, where boats would come in and where the cargo was slaves. They were brought to the slave warehouse where the museum is. And another 4 blocks the other direction is the town square where those human beings were auctioned off. I'm a firm believer that we can't heal wounds until we think about what caused those wounds. I meant to say earlier that when I was in rabbinical school, I was a chaplain at the UCLA Medical Center, and I visited Jewish patients daily for a year. And when I walked into a room with a Jewish person, there's a particular Jewish prayer for healing called Misha Berach, which talks about 2 layers of healing: the healing of the body and healing of the soul. The healing of the body, I got 0 skills. I can throw a Band-Aid on like a cute little cut, but more than that, I turn that to all you beautiful people who are learning online. And maybe it's if you believe in God or the Holy One or some force in the universe beyond you and all the mad skills you all bring. But in terms of the healing of the soul, healing what is hurting us inside, I have seen as a congregational rabbi how that helps, how we can do that with individuals. And I think Isoke and I come to you all today And we went to Alabama with 22 of you all, which I'll talk about in a minute, because I think, and when we begin to face the pain of race in America and the pain we have that has been caused here, we can, once we face that head on, we can begin to heal wounds in our souls, in our families, dare I say, in our hospital departments and in our institutions, in our cities, and I think in our country. But until we look at it, we can't begin to heal those wounds. So we took 85 people to the opening. We took 100 people a year later, and March 1st through 5th, I can't believe it's been a year. A year ago, we took 110 people, including 22-ish people from UCSF. I'm going to rifle through their names right now, all juicy souls who Isoke and I have been meeting with every week since we got back. Doctors Rafi Hirsch, Renee Navarro, Dan Lowenstein, Anda Kuo, Michelle Guy, Glenn Rosenbluth, Nancy Milliken, Meg McNamara, Kevin Grumbach, Joe Guglielmo, Elizabeth Ozer, Erica Lawson, Josh Bamberger, Juliana Morris, Judy Hirsch, Jeff Chu, Joshua Fears, Paula Fleischer, Roberto Vargas, and Jody Hirsch. All of us were on the ground on a bus as the COVID tsunami of COVID was cresting over America, and we knew nothing about COVID. We were in a bus together, traveling through Alabama, looking head on at inequities in healthcare. We visited, you might have seen the article in the New Yorker a few months ago about how kids are getting hookworm in Western Alabama in the Black Belt. We visited a town there. We met experts at the university, and amazing people working at the University of Alabama Medical Center who were doing incredibly holy work, opening up centers for LGBTQ kids in the sticks of Alabama. It was an action-packed, heartbreaking, soul-shattering 5 days, which I personally have like 1,000+ stories from those 5 days, but I'm going to just tell you about 2 of them right now. On morning, I think number 2 of our journey, we went to visit a place called Liberty House. Liberty House is a former plantation. Our tour bus pulls up with an interfaith, interreligious, interracial group of folks looking out at a gorgeous building with columns in front of it, built in 1850 in Alabama. Liberty House, that is now a modern day bed and breakfast. Sitting on the stoop of that building are 4 or 5 people, including the 5th generation descendants of the owners of the building from way back when. We went to wrestle, to look head on at this building that was built by slaves, with folks who have not come to terms with the white supremacy that pulses through their veins. And they broke us up into 3 groups in this former plantation. And in our various groups, everyone, unbeknownst to us, each of us asked the question, did you all have slaves here? And one person said, yes, we had slaves here. And another person said, no, we didn't have slaves here. No, there were no slaves here. And a third person said, oh, we had slaves, but we treated them really well. We came out of that building, and I think all 25 of us who got back on the bus, like, we were taken out at the knees, and oxygen was sucked from our lungs. And we could not believe that there we were in the middle of Trump's America, in the middle of a state that voted differently, I suspect, than most, if not all of us on that bus, with folks who were holding on to some of these very painful thoughts, who welcomed us warmly, I should say. And that we just got back on the bus and were silent. And Isoke was not with us that morning, and I just longed for her to be there to hold this, because I know she would know how to help us hold that space. In time, that group of 25 of us from UCSF met up in Montgomery, Alabama, with a group of 85 people from Glide, from my wife Noah's congregation, The Kitchen, and a few other folks from LA. And we gathered in this King Center in the community center at Martin Luther King's Ebenezer Baptist Church, or excuse me, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, which is across the street from the Southern Poverty Law Center. And we shared a meal, all of us who long before we went on the trip had gathered at Glide to share stories and share meals and wrestle with hard American stories about the history of slavery, of which many of our African-American Glide frontline staff who came with us to Alabama did not know the history of slavery. Just hold that for a minute. That Black folks who are getting paid $18 or $22 an hour at Glide did not know the history of slavery or did not know the history of lynching. I thought to myself on my particular Jewish gene, I can't imagine a Jewish kid on the planet who does not know the history of the Holocaust and how being robbed of that history robs you of your power. And so we sat that night before we were going to the museum and the memorial in a very tight, confined circle. And we looked around the room at everyone who knowing each other from on the ground in San Francisco. And Isoke sang with us, and Vernon Bush, the leader of the Glide Ensemble, sang with us. And I gave a little intention for the next day. I said, it's going to be an analog day. I'm going to eat, if you can't turn your phones off, then I'm going to steal them from you because I want your hearts fully, fully present. And we walked in groups of 20 into the museum, the Legacy Museum. And I know universally, I think it is one of the holiest spots in America that reliably delivers gut punches where there are signs on the wall that will say that from the civil rights movement era in the 60s that said no Blacks, no Jews, no dogs. And it told the history there, and we came out and we sang together and processed and walked together after the museum up about a mile walk to what is called the National Memorial for Peace and Justice that houses, that remembers 4,400 known victims of lynching. There's 800 pillars that hang from the ceiling, each with the name of a county in America, and below that the names of everyone who was lynched in that county. The second story I'll tell with you from our trip is Judy Young, who heads UCSF Center for Excellence in Women's Health. Told the story since she came back about how she was looking for the names of 2 of her family members who were lynched. And the entire journey, I'm going to put a link in the chat ultimately to Judy's story, which is recorded on video, which I'm going to compel you to listen to before the week is over. It should haunt you and should propel you more deeply into the work. That was our journey. We finished, we sang, it rocked us. I could talk for hours about it, but I want to talk about the work we have done since we came back. We had intended to meet once or twice afterwards. COVID came, we could not meet in person. Nancy Milliken, Dr. Nancy Milliken said, I think we should meet weekly. And we thought, Isoke and I were like, maybe we'll meet for a month or so. And I can tell you this group of us have been meeting every Wednesday night for anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. And my rabbi brain thinks of us as an interfaith spiritual justice congregation where we cry together, we laugh with one another, we sing, we poke a little fun at one another, and we think deeply about the through line from what we learned on the ground in Alabama to what we see on the ground here in San Francisco. Within 2 weeks after we got back, one of our participants was leading a Zoom seminar for, I think, 700 people, was Zoom bombed, was called the N-word on that Zoom gathering. No one stood up to protect her. Within 24 hours, that participant was on that was on a Tuesday. On that Wednesday evening, that participant shared this story with us in our group. And Isoke, I'll just turn it to you to how you handled it. You're muted, just in case.
Thank you. And I hope you all will take note of this because this is something that we can all do. It's simple. It doesn't require money. It doesn't require going and signing a petition or marching or anything. We can all do this. I invited the group to do what's called a truth shower, something that a colleague and I from the past developed as a way of clearing the garbage that gets put on people. And so a truth shower is simply a group of people, sometimes it's just one, where you you think to yourself, what are the lies and the misinformation that get told about this particular group? So if it's a woman, let's say, and she has encountered painful, harmful sexism, men in her life and women too can shower her with the truth, like, you're strong, you're powerful, your life has meaning, has as much meaning as anyone else's. We are glad you're here. We're made more by you. So anyway, a truth shower is just literally that. It's like to shower a person with the contradictory information qualities that people typically get in the world, right? So in that call, it was such an assault. It was an assault on everyone, but this person is a person of color, and so and no one did anything. And I think, we could talk about that another time, but really it's like we need to look at how, when we are in the presence of this vitriol and this hurtful energy, we freeze, right? Like, you all know, freeze, flee, or fight. Very often we freeze, and it can look then like no one cares when we freeze because no one says anything. But in this instance, I didn't want that to happen. So after the person told her story, we just showered her with the truth about who she is and what she is and what her worth is. And anyone can do that.
Thanks, Isoke. I want to talk a little bit about how this budding relationship between Glide and UCSF, how I see it and how it has impacted me and has helped me, I would say, feel more alive as a rabbi, as a human being, as an American than maybe I ever have. And I just attribute, one, to the partnership with Isoke, but two, to all the names I mentioned, to how people show up deeply humble and real, and no need to perform. But someone said to me, it's like the hierarchy collapsed and we just get to be profoundly real with one another, to bring our pain to the circle, to bring triumphs. After this participant shared this story with the group, and Isoke helped us process it, Dr. Dan Lowenstein went to, the UCSF town hall that following Friday and reported about this incident and used the language of something like, it was as if a lynching happened on our campus last week. And I said before we left, and I say sometimes, like, I want to take us to Alabama and bring us back to our seats of power, and hope that the stories we learn in Alabama, the brutal stories we encounter, not only eat at our stomach lining on an hourly basis, but propel us more deeply into the justice and healing work that I think this time in America has summoned us to. I think it is our time. And I think in this budding partnership, I want to just give you a few examples of how, through the relationships, I would say covenantal relationships we have built, deeply loving, respectful, enduring relationships that can withstand calling each other out on stuff, that have inspired me to no end. A few examples of how these partnerships are playing out in ways that I never could have imagined back in rabbinical school that I would be doing such work. But every couple weeks right now, some of you might know, there are UCSF pediatric residents are, I call it, making a justice pilgrimage into Glide. They're coming in for anywhere from 3 to 5 hours to serve meals, to pack harm reduction kits, to get close to Glide. And then they meet with me or Isoke or Rod Penalosa, who is our director of programs at Glide, to spiritually process what it meant to come into Glide. I regularly quote Brian Stevenson, the 4 points in his TED Talk, which are the Torah or the North Star of my justice work. I try to operationalize this in every educational experience I build, both in Alabama and the experiences of making pilgrimage into Glide. And I want to seriously invite all of you to come into Glide one-on-one with your family, with your floors, with your departments. Isoke and I will be your concierge to create the most impactful experience possible. The 4 points are the need for proximity. We can talk at Mission Bay or Parnassus or in Marin County or far away from the Tenderloin about racial justice, about housing or homelessness. Nothing can substitute for getting close, for looking people in the eye, from seeing the spark of God in them, from smelling that they have not showered in a day or a week, to think that our city has not put enough money into thinking about the dignity of creating space for them to go to the bathroom in private. Nothing will substitute for getting proximate. Brian's second point is to have the courage to imagine new narratives. Us, them, Jew, Christian, black, white, that hasn't served us well. How might we pull a periscope up and out of our new reality in our city, in our hospitals, to imagine a new, more promising, more prophetic, more healing reality, not just of bodies, but of souls. The third, he said, we have to hold on to hope. We have to believe that we can turn Ellis Street. We have to believe that we can turn racial justice at UCSF. If we give up hope, he said, the opposite of hope is injustice. If I don't have hope that I can turn Ellis Street, I might as well go get a tan in Boca Raton, right? And the last one, he said, the last one is that we have to do uncomfortable things. Okay, that's the hardest one. It is hard to walk down Ellis Street and to see 10 or 30 people splayed out on the sidewalk. Right? Needles in their arms, human feces in many places, right? That is incredibly uncomfortable, right? To hold on to this fact that roughly 6% of San Franciscans are African-American, yet 37% of our unsheltered folks are African-American. Hold that for a minute. 6 times the number of people in the population of African-Americans are homeless in our town. Brian Stevenson said, slavery didn't end in 1865, it just evolved. It just evolved to mass incarceration, and I would say to mass poverty on the streets of the Tenderloin, to racial inequities in UCSF. Proximity, new narratives, hope, and doing uncomfortable things. So the pediatric residents are coming in and we're helping them operational all 4 of those. And I love meeting with them. We are having incredibly deep conversations about what they are learning. We talked about encounters with Child Protective Services earlier this week in my meeting with them, and that story is still eating at me, and the racial disparities in reporting cases and thinking about that. So I'm meeting with them. We are meeting with them and bringing them into the Tenderloin. Isoke and I are going to be piloting a program in March and April and May with a total of 75 folks from UCSF. It's based on the Chancellor's Campus Safety Task Force. We're calling this program Healers at the Gate, to help rethink campus safety. And what does it mean to have, I never ever thought about policing at a hospital. And what does it mean that the first people you encounter at the San Francisco General Hospital are not social workers and not loving doctors or nurses, but the sheriff's department, right? What does that mean? And how might we rethink? At Glide, we talk about, we teach our staff about trauma-informed care, and our camp community safety team has a hands-off policy. They know most people in the neighborhood and know how to show up with compassion or to come in a little harsh and call people on their stuff. So we're going to build out a program. There's 3 day long immersive justice pilgrimages for 25 people at a time to come into the Tenderloin, based on a program Isoke and I have piloted for police officers and district attorneys from around the country that we call an officer in a mensch. So we could not be more excited to be bringing these people into the Tenderloin and to help UCSF rethink what it means to police or to have safety on campus. I often talk about putting Glide goggles on. How might you walk through the world thinking with unconditional love and radical acceptance and truth-telling? And the last story I'll tell, then I'll turn it to you, Isoke, is that in a couple of weeks, we're going to be teaching 300 managers at the hospital. I believe that's the Mission Bay campus that Sheila Antrim and a few others pulled us into to talk about this work that we're doing that is soul-oriented healing, to begin to talk both about our trip to Alabama and how that applies to the work you all do on a daily basis. And I'll just close and then turn it to you. It's okay, like, I could not feel more alive in this work, more privileged to be in partnership with certainly all of our Wednesday night group and all of you in new ways. And truly do not be shy. If you have questions or you want to cook ideas or deepen partnerships, please reach out to me, mlezak@glide.org. We want to be in this with you and help bring some healing and righteous light to your institution and our city. Isoke.
Beautiful. Isn't he great? And you're only seeing a tiny bit of it. This human being is just a love machine. I'm so proud to work with you. So in closing, I want to say a couple of words about conditioning. Those of you who haven't studied any theory about racism, classism, sexism, etc., this may be new to you. But the idea here is that we all undergo horrific conditioning that enlists us, that recruits us, that without our knowing it, unbeknownst to us, we become participants in a system that does great harm to lots of people. And I want to invite you to consider what your conditioning has been like under these various oppressions. If you're a man, what has your conditioning been like with respect to women? If you're white, what has your conditioning been with respect to people of color? If you're a person of color, what's your conditioning with respect to yourself and to white people? And why? Because almost every day, if you're awake to it, you will see that our engagements with people, with the environment, are very much based in the conditioning process. So I want to tell you a quick story to illustrate this. I grew up in San Francisco, and when I was 7 or 8, I can't remember exactly now, my sisters, my 2 younger sisters and I were taken from my mother and placed in youth guidance center. In those days, yeah, we went to the same building where the bigger kids went, but there was a separate unit. And we were there. They let me be with my younger sisters for the first 2 days or so. And then on the 3rd day, a woman came, and she was a social worker. And I was sort of the big sister at 7 or 8, right? So my sisters were 3 and 4, or 4 and 5. And I said to her, when can we go home? And she said, you can go home when your mother stops drinking. And, we started crying. And she said, I don't know why you're so upset. After all, you're just half sisters. Well, this is such an assault to a Black child, where we grow up, if you have the same mother or even the same father, you're sisters, period. So this whole idea of half was like, we knew that such a thing existed, but that was never used with us. And I was brokenhearted that she said that, because she was essentially saying that the fact that you're only half sisters gives you no right to feel this deeply for each other. And when she left, I remember fussing at my sisters and saying, I don't care what that white lady said. We are sisters. We are sisters. And now get on your knees and let's pray that mama stops drinking. I just want you to let that story, like, where does that story take you? Like, there was so many problems with that story. And it was her conditioning. I don't hold anything against her now. I still feel the pain of that moment, but she was just enacting her conditioning. Somebody had to tell her. Somebody had to teach her that these relationships were of less value. So that's an example from my own personal life. And I'm inviting you to think, whenever you get what we might call reactivated or triggered by some engagement with people who are not members of your own group, ask yourself, is this a result of my conditioning? Well, where is my conditioning playing out here in my experience of this? You can do that. Anyone can do that. Again, it doesn't cost you anything. And I think getting together with other people, like we have this value at Glide that says truth telling. So our recovery model is based on truth telling. We tell the truth, the uncomfortable, difficult truth as much as possible to each other. Why? Because there's a commitment on everybody's part not to cancel. So I want to just say to this issue of cancel culture, we don't cancel at Glide. We don't cancel. Now, somebody might act out so, poorly at Glide that we have to say, you got to try to come back tomorrow. You can't, you have to leave today, but you can try again tomorrow. That's about as far as we go with that. So that's a huge value when people know that you're not going to cancel them. So get together with other people, make that agreement like, okay, let's form this group of 2 or 3 people and we're going to talk about how we're conditioned under racism, sexism, homophobia, blah, 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 all this stuff. And we will not cancel each other. We will have implicit and explicit amnesty for everyone in this group. You can tell the unbridled truth and we will still love you. So that's one thing. And then the last thing is, we're all in this together. As a Black person who has suffered a lot at the hands of racism, not like many, not my experiences have not been that awful, relatively speaking. But when you are a member of a group and you know the history and you hear about things that are happening in the news, vicariously you experience those hurts. So I'm very hurt about racism and about fat oppression and about sexism and all that stuff. But the Holy One, as Michael says, brought me here as a liberator for everybody, period. I'm not here just for the liberation of Black people or women or poor people or fat people. I am here for everyone's liberation. That is a hard line to hold when people of my group are saying, you're wasting your love, you're wasting your forgiveness. How can you forgive when, over and over and over again, the same crimes get committed and people are still turning a blind eye? And all I say is, you know how I can do that? I can do it because I know me. I know my own propensity to bury my head in the sand. I know my own propensity to turn on the TV as a way of avoiding some of the painful things that are happening in the world. I know my own propensity to wish ill on another. I know my own propensity to say, you're not as good as me or whatever, to rank people based on some scale that who knows where the scale came from. So I am a harsh self-critic, but not in a loving way though, because I'm like, I am loved anyway. I am loved anyway. And that's why I can love you anyway. Show me, show me how twisted and messed up your mind is. I trust that together, when we address these things with truth and with love, it'll get untwisted. So that's my invitation. Let's get untwisted. Let's get untwisted. We've been twisted and turned into knots and all kinds of crazy stuff. Let's get untwisted and let's help each other get untwisted. And then I think, where are we? Okay. I think I want to share with you a song that that is the pilgrimage, the Glide, Alabama pilgrimage theme song that one of the congregants at Glide wrote. Say her name.
Jen Allen Zito.
Jen Allen Zito. Okay. I'm 70 and the nouns are going. But anyhow, it goes like this. It's called Rise in Step. Rise in step, one by one. When all of our voices sing out loud, it can be done. I know it begins with me, so that one day soon we'll all be truly free. Great song, right? We need song. We need joy. So anything that brings you joy, whether it's swimming or biking or bathing or just hanging out with your loved ones or whatever brings you joy, looking at the sky, do what brings you joy. And for some of us, it's singing. So dance, sing, act a fool. I think acting a fool is a great way to find joy. I think Jews and Black people know a lot about acting a fool. So I invite you to find your way into joy. What can help you to just, okay, for now, all that stuff is gone. And I'm just gonna make myself available to the love vibe and to what makes me feel good. Thank you.
Rabbi Michael, are you wrapped up too?
I am. After Isoke sings, the church doors shutter, so I turn it over.
So beautiful. We are so fortunate to have had two songs that are just soul awakening. Thank you, Isoke, for that gift. And thanks to both of you for sharing your wisdom and experiences with us. We have time for questions, so please post them in the Q&A. In the meantime, I had a few. I love the moments, like the pearls that you've dropped to us for what we can do in those little bits of moments. It doesn't take an hour of, necessarily, but the truth shower. I'm thinking, oh, that's a great way to start out a Zoom meeting. Isoke, you also shared ways that we can interrupt the patterns we have inside us. Are there other tools like that that you would like to impart, knowing what you've seen about UCSF and the pace of things here and what we all are grappling with every day? If there are any other tools that you would like to share, I welcome them. And I also have another question, but I'll pause first.
I think my granddaughter's can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, because I
We're
just
good. We're all good.
Okay, good. Yeah, there are a couple. One is I invite people to do some journaling and come up with a statement of emancipation for yourself. Like a recognition that the problems we're looking at are systemic. It's very difficult to acknowledge that. That, for example, I was reading today that the whole issue of who is white, that is institutionally baked in. The Supreme Court held a number of hearings in the 1800s and then on into the 1900s. When people came, like a Sikh man, said, I'm Caucasian. I'm from the Caucasian, I'm Caucasian. And they're like, okay, you might be Caucasian, but you're not white, right? So this battle over who is white and what does that mean has been going on for a long time. And support for white supremacy, we use that term. I mean, no harm when I use it. It doesn't have to do with skin color, it has to do with an ideology. That to find out where that ideology came from, track its trajectory. Where did it come from? When did we start calling people white? Anyway, that it's systemic. And we are not bad that we were baked in it. We are not bad. We deserve absolute forgiveness, right? So that's the starting point. But then to start like journaling, okay, what is my, based on all that, what is my emancipatory statement that I am going to live by? This system is not going to use my consciousness to further harm to myself or others, right? That could be a statement. And then the last one came to me in my meditation a few months ago. Every time something horrible happens to Black people and you feel brokenhearted about it, and but you don't know what to do. Now, some of you might, I am a little hesitant. Anda and Michael know that I'm very interested in quantum thought and how there is a field we live in, and that we are feeding that field with our energy, with our thoughts. Everything begins with thought. So I started thinking, well, what if you were to say, every time you hear about something and you feel brokenhearted about what's happening to Black people, just as an example, because we could extend that, that you were to say, give yourself a mantra. My mantra for Black people is this: may my heart and my mind and my consciousness be a sanctuary for all Black people. And you just repeat that, just repeat it. And you can see that it changes the structure, it changes the structure of your thinking. And it costs nothing. And it's not a betrayal of anybody. You're not saying, may my house, my actual house, be a sanctuary, but just my mind, my heart, and my consciousness. So that's another one.
Yeah.
Amen. I'll say briefly, when we've trained police officers and district attorneys at Glide, we regularly would hear from them. We would ask them, like, what do you do, like, when you encounter violence or you have a challenging day at work? And the regular response is, oh, we just put it in our backpack. We put it in our backpack and we keep carrying it. I can imagine the trauma that you all on this call witness, overt, covert, micro, macro, and the speed with which you operate and run through your life and run home to kids or family or to the dog. And throwing the tendency to throw things in the backpack. I think the backpack haunts us. And I think if we don't unpack it, your patients, your institution, America pays a price for it. And I think the invitation to unpack it is what we do on our Wednesday night meetings. I think we're done that a little bit here. And I think only life will come from unpacking that backpack. It might be hard, but I think that is where life is coming from. And if we're reaching for life, not just physical well-being, but spiritual, emotional, heart well-being, we got to unpack it.
Thank you both. I have one last closing question. We have about a minute, so it may be tough, but we'll try. And again, just so much gratitude. I wish we had more time in our lives to take this time, because we'd be all better providers. Slide's been around for a long, long time. UCSF has been around for a long, long time. I think we may partner like individuals or here and there. What has happened now, and why is Glide partnering with UCSF in this way, do you think? It has been such a gift.
I'll say briefly, when we came back from trip number one, Karen Hanrahan, Glide's president and CEO, Miguel Bustos, who runs Glide's Center for Social Justice, said to me, like, how do we dial up the impact of this? I met with Dr. Josh Bamberger and Paula Fleischer, who works in the Center for Community Engagement. And I said, hey, what should we do? And they're like, what if we brought healthcare leaders? I didn't know anything about healthcare leaders other than my own, private doctor. I never once thought about inequities in healthcare. And I can say, Anda, since we've been back, we've think about systemic racism baked into the system. So I think we haven't even asked if we could hold each other's hands yet, but we like dancing with each other. And it feels like we've got a lot to learn with and from one another, and look forward to mining that potential in the coming months and years.
Thank
And
you.
I'll just add my favorite quote this last few years. My favorite quote, Aldous Huxley, I'm told. I didn't find it myself, but someone said. He said, No power on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. So the time has come for places like Glide and places like UCSF to find their way to each other and do the work together.
Amen.
Wow, is that a beautiful way to end this? This is fantastic. There's lots of comments on the Q&A to express gratitude for all of it. The songs, the wisdom, the sharing. It's really quite clear that this is much appreciated. And so I echo what Anda said, wish that we had much more time. And whenever I hear someone say that, I always say, then we just have to make more time. We're not going to do that today. I respect everybody's pre-planned schedules, but I will make sure that I work with Anda to find more time in either this venue or another way to continue these conversations, because it's really incredibly important and such a valuable collaboration. So Anda, thank you very much for making this happen, and making sure that we actually extended an invitation to Rabbi Michael and to Isoki, and both of you, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Anda, any other closing comments before we say goodbye to everybody?
No, I can see in the chat people want more. And for those asking for Michael's email, I see you and I will put you in contact.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you,
Really
everyone.
blessed to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Have a beautiful
great day.
Have a beautiful day.
Bye.